Hello mga ka-learners! You've learned about the 7 continents and the major physical features of the world. In this lesson, you will study a more precise way of locating any place on Earth. Specifically, you will learn to locate places in reference to the North and South Poles, equator, and latitude and longitude. In this lesson, we will use latitude and longitude to locate the equator, the North and South Poles, and other geographical features on the globe. Let's look at the globe again. Let's look at the different features of the globe. Can you find the North Pole, the South Pole, and the equator? The North Pole marks the northernmost part of the Earth. Can you identify the ocean found in this area? The North Pole is found in the Arctic Ocean, where all the northern longitudinal lines meet. The South Pole is located on the southernmost part of the Earth. It is where Antarctica is found and where the southern longitudinal lines meet. The 2 poles make up another imaginary line called the Earth's axis on which the Earth rotates. The equator is a line of reference drawn around the Earth. It divides the Earth into 2 equal halves. It is also an equal distance from both the North and the South Pole. The portion of the Earth above the equator is called the Northern Hemisphere, or the upper half of the globe. The portion below this line is the Southern Hemisphere, or the lower half of the globe. The prime meridian is a similar line of reference that runs from north to south to Greenwich, England. Another significant meridian on the other side of the Earth is the International Dateline in the Pacific Ocean. It lies directly opposite the prime meridian. The prime meridian and the International Dateline divide the globe into the Eastern Hemisphere and the Western Hemisphere. The International Dateline is important because it is a reference point for the time zones of the world. For example, if it is 7 p.m. in Manila, it could be 8 a.m. in some parts of the United States. This is because only half of the globe faces the sun every time. That part will have daylight, while on the other side, it will be nighttime. Also, because of the time zone differences, the International Dateline determines differences in dates. For example, it could be May 28 on the left side of the International Dateline, while on the right, the date would still be May 27. Latitudinal lines are imaginary lines on the globe that run east to west and measure angular distance north or south of the equator. Longitudinal lines are imaginary lines on the globe that run north to south and measure angular distance east or west of the prime meridian. So how do we locate places using these lines? The idea of angular distance is simple. Imagine 2 lines of the same length beginning at one common point but going in different directions. The angular distance between the endpoints of these 2 lines would be represented by the measurement of the angle that the 2 lines form. Angular distance is expressed in degrees, subdivided into minutes and seconds. If we take the very center of the Earth as a common point, any point on the Earth's surface will have an angular distance from the nearest point on the equator, which is 0 degrees latitude. This, along with its position relative to the equator, would be its latitude. The same point on the Earth's surface would also have an angular distance from the nearest point on the prime meridian, which is 0 degrees longitude. This, along with its point relative to the prime meridian, would be its longitude. Any point on the Earth's surface can therefore be located using its latitude and longitude as coordinates. Study the position of Asia in terms of longitude and latitude. Note the longitude and latitude lines. Note too that each line represents a specific angular distance from the prime meridian as shown at the topmost part of the line. Study the map of the Philippines. What is the angular distance of the longitudinal line that passes through Luzon? If you answered 120 degrees, you are correct. To be more specific, Luzon is about 120 degrees east longitude or east of the prime meridian. Now, locate the northernmost part of the Philippines. A latitude line is near it. What is the angular distance of that line? If you answered 20 degrees, that's correct. That would make the northern part of the Philippines about 20 degrees in latitude. Is it above or below the equator? Check your map again. The northern part of the Philippines is about 20 degrees north latitude. Note that the equator has a latitude of 0. Countries near the equator are warmer countries. Would you expect the Philippines, a country only about 10 to 20 degrees north of the equator, to be warm? Yes, you should. The Philippines has a warm tropical climate. Locate Japan on the map. What is the angular distance of the latitude line that passes through Japan? If you answered 40 degrees north latitude, you got it right. Would you expect Japan to be colder than the Philippines? Countries that are farther from the equator are colder countries. Since Japan is farther from the equator, it experiences snow. This means it is colder than the Philippines. The latitude and longitude lines are also used to locate more specific places. Maps and globes are marked with vertical and horizontal lines that represent every 5th or 10th degree of latitude and longitude. The resulting grid makes it easier to pinpoint locations on the map or globe. Now that you know how to use these lines, find out the latitude and longitude of Manila on the map. What did you find? The latitude of Manila is about 15 degrees north and the longitude is about 120 degrees east. Its exact coordinates are 14 degrees, 35 minutes north and 121 degrees east. Is your answer near this value? If it is, you are now ready to identify the location of a place on the world map or globe through its latitude and longitude lines. Let's summarize what we have learned so far. We learned where the equator is. We also learned where the north and south poles are. We also looked at two important meridians, the prime meridian, which passes through Greenwich, England, and the international date line found at the opposite part of the globe. We also learned how to use longitude and latitude lines to tell the exact location of any place on the map. There it is, mga ka-learners! That's another valuable lesson, the major physical features of the world. Now, you will be more familiar with what you see and where they are where you travel. See you next time!